We're here at Mobile World Congress 2018. We're outside the stand of Tata Communications Transformation Services. We've just recorded a conversation with Madhu, who's the chairman and CEO of TCTS, and Nick Willetts from the TM Forum about the future telco. Let's have a look.
Hi, this is Madhusudhan, CEO Tata Communication Transformation Services. Today I'm in conversation with Nick. Welcome Nick, nice seeing you.
Nice to be here.
CEO of TM Forum. And then today's conversation, I thought we should talk about the future of telco and the transformation priorities which we have been seeing. So any thoughts around it, Nick, based on you have seen the various telcos across the globe? And then as Tata Communication Transformation Services, we do have certain focus areas. So I just want to get your thoughts around how it is going, and then future of telco, and then how the telco transformation itself is happening.
Sure, and thanks for having me, Madhu. The challenge, I think, with transformation today is the enormity of change that's needed. And I think what's become clear to operators around the world in the last 18 months is it's about more than a technology or customer-centric transformation. We're talking about a digital business transformation. And that, in companies of the size we're talking about, is really complicated. You've got multiple different facets of the change that needs to happen. So we believe that you have to go through a pretty dramatic process of simplifying the business, looking at how you can really change the levels of automation across the business, and then really turning into an intelligence-driven, data-driven business. If we look at what's happening in the market today, we see two facets in play. The first is a split ambition. Some telco operators looking to say, I just want to be a more digital version of what I am today. More efficient, more customer-centric, but ultimately in the same business. And that accounts for maybe 45% of companies that we've surveyed around the market. If we go beyond that and we look at those who have greater aspirations, we see just over half of operators saying, actually, I've got ambitions into a broader role, really becoming what we would call a digital partner into the market, thinking beyond connectivity. To do that requires a different level of transformation, requires executing on a more holistic business transformation.
Great, it's wonderful. Actually, as you know, Nick, when we were having a chat otherwise, if you see that even from the Tata Communication Transformation Services, which we call it as TCTS, the framework also revolves around that. In fact, recently when we went through the surveying about 60 plus service providers across the globe, in fact, we could come out their priorities based on that. Actually, we could come out the transformational priorities which these people are pretty much simplify, automate, and then basically how the revenue enhancement or business transformation itself is going to look at as such. So we just created a framework around this. Initially, as all of us know, that for any telcos or something like that, it was more specific to how the network elements get managed, or the physical network management was the priority. As we move further and further, it went into the intelligent way of network management, or the more OSS and BSS are surrounding that actually. As we move further and further, it is getting smarter operations actually. What this means is smarter operations is not something which any of us haven't heard of, but when you look at it, there is quite a lot of investment which has already gone in across the service providers. Utilizing the systems which are there, utilizing the various tools and automation what they have. How do you make a layer which basically meets one, from a service provider perspective, it is that much more economical. At the same time, from a user, which is the customer, or whether it is B2B, B2C, or any of those, how do they see the perceivable difference around it? That's where is the smart operations which you see. So that's where we looked at some specific areas around predictive analytics, or analytics as a whole, which enables our overall operational transformation itself. This also reminds me that in one of the engagements which we had with a large enterprise, what we were working, that's basically, it's a consortium for which we worked on. How does a whole the software-defined network which they have been transitioned, how does the operational setup itself would get transitioned into? Have you come across the areas around which where the service provider or a consortium where they have transitioned from a technology perspective, the software defined, At the same time, the operational transformation. Any thoughts around it?
I think we're starting to see people attempting that change. I think the challenge of it is how to go beyond just procuring a new technology solution or just investing in a new way of working in terms of the underlying business that you're trying to run. And the challenge within that is you're trying to execute this very complex transformation at once. So if we look at the capabilities around, say, software-defined networking and network function virtualization, it has yet to deliver on some of the early promises. I think we're at a similar risk around 5G, for example, where there's a lot of hype and excitement around 5G, but when you look at the underlying business model, it requires a more fundamental change. So I think where we see frameworks coming into play that allow you to coordinate that change and marry the technology changes and the people and organizational changes together into a transformation, it becomes much more powerful. So we certainly see that there's a need to think beyond the technology, and I think in an industry that has invested heavily in technology, we've been a technology industry, making this switch to being a software-driven business and the associated changes in how we operate, learning from digital native businesses that we admire around the world, and then finding a version of that that fits telco and that is an acceptable path for us as an industry is the biggest challenge we're facing right now. The thing that we believe is that you have to get on with this change immediately. Yeah. This is not a case of waiting for something to change or waiting for there to be a perfect solution. It's not a case of just buying a new bit of technology. You've got to start changing the business today, changing the way that you think, innovate, the way you deliver solutions, and really getting into a continuous improvement cycle based around what we would call micro revolutions rather than big bang approaches we've seen in the past.
Excellent. It's very interesting that you mentioned, I think you mentioned quite a lot of things, especially around 5G, around the basic core network transformation, and hence leading into the overall business transformation itself actually. That's where at least I take pride in saying that we as TCTS, we have evolved from a a telco operational mindset into a transformational mindset, which is where I call myself as a company which transforms both at a technology level as well as at a business process level. You can go as deep as possible in one particular process. At the same time, you can stitch the horizontal processes which could be looked at actually. It's very nice, especially 5G is the one which is the thing of the discussion, which yesterday when I was in the keynote, one of the comments which one of the two of the key priorities which they identified was one around AI, number two around 5G. Yes, 5G is very, everybody talks about it, there is quite a lot of hype around it. At the same time, the readiness which is required for the network which is already there to receive that 5G capability itself is the one which is a big transformation one is looking at, which is where I would think we will be in a position to play a huge engagement asset.
I think we're in a very interesting moment where historically, as an industry, we've waited for a new technology to be developed. We've always had a clear vision of the next generation of radio technology, and that's ushered in other changes and so on. Now we're at this crossroads where we have to understand, but also think about the business model. We think about how we're going to monetize that technology. And I think we're starting to see an understanding in the market that the change has to happen at a much deeper level. We have too much complexity in our businesses today to radically simplify them. We have to not only adopt technologies like AI as a new technology, but understand it allows us to move to a completely zero-touch environment for how we actually operate our businesses. And we have to think about everything from architecture through to enterprise architecture in a very different way. And that's core to what a lot of the work that the TM Forum is doing in trying to actually really drive and accelerate change, working with companies like TCTS around our digital maturity model to help companies navigate that change, and really trying to bring the industry together at a time when we need to collaborate more than ever before.
Absolutely. It's good that, in fact, personally I'm quite bullish about the DMM model itself, digital maturity model. In fact, as we speak, quite a few of our smart engineers are getting trained around it. That as we speak, we are also looking at how this could be done on the live network and then see the outcome of that whole digital maturity model itself. I think that itself should be a transformational aspect leading us into receiving 5Gs or the SDNs or NFVs onto the network, ultimately into, it could be a virtual network, it could be a network on the cloud, or any of those futuristic innovations which are happening. it is, I would say it is a stepping stone for us to get into that next level itself as such actually.
I think it's about unlocking the capability. I think, the technology is now there. That's the great news, that the technology, be it moving to cloud native, API driven, microservice based approaches, these technologies are all very well understood in the hyperscale internet company world, and we can learn from and leverage that experience. We're developing as an industry an ability to develop new technology very quickly. But we now have to face head on, which is why I think it's good that you're looking beyond just the technology layer and getting into the business process, is how do we actually change the way we think as companies, how we innovate, how we work together, and how we actually drive new products and services into the market. If we can address that challenge, and we can give ourselves as businesses the agility we need to actually seize those opportunities, we can move at the kind of clock speed we see hyperscale internet companies moving at, and that allows us to be much more competitive than we've been in the past. So for me, the technology is there. There's a lot of work to do. It's something that as technologists, of course, it excites us, but we can't ignore the fact that we've also got to make a much more challenging cultural change, much more challenging organizational structural change, and we've got to be pretty ruthless in terms of simplification in order to get there as well.
Absolutely, it's wonderful chatting up with you, Nick, and I think there are quite a lot of learnings which me as TCTS or me as an individual could get from what as TM Forum itself has been doing it. And also the engagement what we have, especially around the digital maturity model and then transformational aspects and the learnings what we have as TCTS itself. I think that should be the next areas where we would be focusing on. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Madhu. Thanks very much.